All right, hey guys, my name's Trent. I want to speak to you being public works from a standpoint of surface water management, because that's what we do at Pond Medics. Just in summary, we're a multidisciplinary firm. We are a registered civil engineering firm that specializes in hydraulics and hydrology, but we do everything from planning, design, engineering of stormwater systems all the way through to the management of those, and it involves drones. So let me talk to you about what that looks like. One of the things that we do are hydrographic surveys. We're measuring bathymetry, which is like topography under the water, and we're also doing sub-bottom profiling, but we're integrating drones in that as well. I have 1,000 slides, and I'm going to run through a lot of these very quickly, and if you guys have questions, I'll be here till 2:30. I'll also have cards up here at the table. I've got some planes with me. Come by, ask me questions, look at those. But we do these hydrographic surveys for public utilities, public works departments, like potable water intakes. Well, one of the things that we use drones for in these instances is we need real-time aerial imagery of the surrounding survey area, and we can also pull our topo data off of those images and use that in combination with our hydrographic stuff. Same thing here. We can use the drones for the real-time aerial imagery around our hydrographic surveys, power plant intakes, potable water and utilities. We're doing sediment studies. We're doing the bathymetric studies, all the while collecting data not only from our vessels but also from our drones. We do drought modeling. We can do the bathymetry in the areas that have the water already in the reservoir, and then any contours that we need to collect that don't have water where our vessel's not going to go, we can do that in just a matter of, this particular lake is about a 30 acre lake or so. We can collect the aerial data on a lake this size in about 20 minutes. Whereas like if we send our conventional like RPLS or survey guy out there, their crew is going to take the better part of a day to collect that data for us and probably be trudging through the mud at the same time. A lot of dredging, planning, and verification is done at our firm. The ways that we incorporate the drones in that is, again, collecting the real-time aerial imagery around the site that we're working in, around our boats. We're doing sediment tracking. We're doing riverine systems. A lot of geospatial combined with our geoscience is really what's the catalyst for the drone use. And not only that, but I think one of the challenges right now with engineering is the fact that we have to mate the drone data with our GIS data, with our design data. And we're doing that really successfully and have been for the last few years. But it's an opportunity out there for you guys to, traditionally we've done our survey in the field and our planning and engineering in the office. Now what's happening is we're doing our data collection in the field and we're doing our surveying in the office. And things are changing around the way our workflow happens with our engineering. You guys look like this? I'm telling you, I normally, I give presentations. This is my third one in the last 10 days, but I normally give these presentations over 2 or 3 hours, and so I'm skipping a whole bunch of stuff. Come talk to me. Or if you guys are interested in us coming to you and doing a brown bag or a lunch and learn, we're happy to do that. We do anywhere from 1 to 3 of those a week around the DFW area, and it's very busy right now. All right, look like this, because we're going to start talking about some aerials. Right now, this is what's happening in our airspace. We have the horse and buggy manned aircraft trying to integrate with the new technology of drones, and the two don't know how to get along. If the FAA had it their way, this is what we'd look like. We'd have horse-drawn cars. But the truth is, in the business that we are in, we've used a lot of manned aircraft in the past, and it's been the way to do things, but now there's more efficient ways. I always get a kick out of this picture. The plane on the left, we're stocking shad in a remote area by airplane. All those little confetti things, those are all fish. But other parts of the world have been using unmanned systems for surface water management for a long time. This is an RMAX made by Yamaha. There's 1,000 of these licensed and operating in Japan and have been for several years, but only a few here in the States. It's going to become a regular thing soon. We've been mapping our hydrographic data with robots for a long time, but now if you look on the image down here on the lower right, we're integrating our aircraft with our robots on the water and also doing submersibles as well. So you're seeing this integration of robots as things develop and the technology gets better. Some of the aerial data that we collect, the real-time imagery, we can do 3D point clouds, we can create 3D models around the surface water management project that we're performing. We can also do cross-sections, talked about topography. We can pull that data down off our imagery and process that in the same way that we'd send our survey crew out to go gather manual data points. Little image here from just a flight path over a pond that we're studying. Some more data that we collect from that. You can see the flight path there. That's just that's like a 1 to 3 meter resolution, something you get off Bing or Google. And when we go collect the imagery, we're now bringing it down to 1 to 3 centimeters per pixel. So it's very high resolution imagery. But this is going to conclude my part of the deal. One of the things that we're working on with a couple of universities, one here locally, also Kansas State, is I've got a few drones over here that have some infrared cameras on them. And in our business, we deal with a lot of biological aspects of aquatic vegetation management, phytoplankton blooms, chlorophyll levels, cyanobacteria blooms in our surface bodies of water. And we're collecting data now very quickly with our drones and infrared data to quantify the amount of vegetation growing, the types of vegetation growing, how much cyanobacteria densities do we have before a fish kill is about to occur. And so we're doing this in real time and literally processing data in the field and making in the field decisions, whereas just 3 years ago, this would have taken months to essentially aggregate and then make a decision on. By the time we made a decision, everything had changed in the field and something else had happened that was out of our control. So the real-time stuff is very helpful. I want to turn it over to Mike right now. He's going to talk about more of the regulatory side and what you guys need to know about actually flying for your departments.
What I'm going to speak with you about today is really, and anybody from FAA in the room? Okay, good. No, all jokes aside, there's actually some great policy considerations that I'm going to share with you today. So this is something that I'm with our transportation department. My name is Mike Branum. I'm one of our senior transportation planners at the agency. So we've been working closely with our Air Transportation Technical Advisory Committee, who we traditionally do regional aviation system planning with in coordination with TxDOT Aviation and the FAA. Obviously, looking at airspace concerns and things of that nature around our aviation facilities is something our aviation stakeholders are very interested in, right? Well, in addition to that, though, we're looking at ways on local integration of this technology into our region. We're even considering ways at the agency how we can use this technology for transportation planning. So really the sky is the limit, so to speak, and no pun intended on that, on how we can go about using this technology. So you've heard some different things from Trent already about the application of the technology. I have a high-level overview of really what we refer to it as an unmanned aircraft system instead of a drone. And the reasons for that within the agency is sometimes drones have a negative connotation to it. We like to think of this as a tool, all right? So this is a civilian tool, has a great purpose to the public. We call it an unmanned aircraft system, or these examples in particular are small unmanned aircraft systems, so something that's 55 pounds or less, right? So that includes the telemetry, the control, the data link. So basically the hardware, the software, and the human element of this entire system is your small unmanned aircraft, which is going to be the topic of really a lot of what I'm talking about today as it applies to the policy side of things. So here's some examples you've probably seen, whether on the news. In the top left-hand corner, this is an image of a Global Hawk taking off. You know, that's in your 50, 60,000 feet, your surveillance aircraft, NSA, DOD. Really, I'm honing in on here, the bottom left, the small unmanned aircraft systems. And that's what Trent was just talking about. So different applications, for example, Trent shared with you many of those that apply here, so I'm just going to quickly move on from this slide. And this is what's really important, and this is what I want to focus on as far as the information I'm sharing with you. So currently, there's essentially 3 different ways that you can operate unmanned aircraft in our airspace system. So one, if you're a hobbyist. So if you enjoy maybe creating model aircraft, you know, buying the engine, putting together the wing design, or fusing all these parts together, and your remote control unit and all the sensors that go with it, you can go out and there's basically a 1-page advisory circular from FAA that I think since 1981 they've been referencing people on. If you're a hobbyist or if you're into model aircraft, these are the types of guidelines. Doesn't really apply to most people here. The second is a certificate of authorization. They've been using this process for about 6 or 7 years with public entities. So if you're doing research at a university or a college, if you're a city such as the Arlington Police Department, some of you may know that they actually have a small unmanned aircraft that they're using as a part of their SWAT unit. So that's an example of a public agency use that has a public benefit, and there's a certificate of authorization that you need in order to fly as a municipality. So if you own that asset, as in the small unmanned aircraft, and you want to use this technology, you need a FAA certificate of authorization in order to fly. The third way that you can operate these unmanned aircraft in our airspace system right now is through what's called a Section 333 exemption. So I'm really just kind of covering the really high-level applications of all of these. So a Section 333 exemption is what's being offered to really your commercial and private entities such as pond medics. So this is an opportunity for, this is actually the step, I should say, the next step in FAA's process of having full FAA or a plan for full integration of small unmanned aircraft by September 2015 this year. So just a little bit of background. In 2012, FAA received their reauthorization bill and funding. Within that, there was a statute that required them by Congress to have a plan for the integration of unmanned aircraft by September of this year. So as they're approaching that, we can see that they're opening up more opportunities for unmanned aircraft to have access to the skies. So really 3 ways. If you're a hobbyist, so you have absolutely no commercial interest or ties to a public entity or a public agency. So that's one. If you are the public, there's a certificate of authorization. If you're not, if you're a commercial entity that's looking to operate for hire or to perform services for a public agency, if that's the case, then there's a Section 333 exemption. Right now, FAA is reviewing a notice of proposed rulemaking for the use of small unmanned aircraft. I believe that comment period ended earlier this year, is right before the summer. So I've already provided a little bit of background on the 2012 reauthorization from FAA. It's referred to as the Modernization and Reform Act. Since then, and looking at the unauthorized use of unmanned aircraft and why it's a concern is thinking in terms of airspace. So some of the problems that we've had is this technology is so accessible now and it's affordable. So you can go on to Amazon.com, and if you have anywhere from a couple hundred to maybe $1,500 or $2,000, you can get a very capable aircraft to do some of the things that Trent was talking about previously, but also in addition to being able to have some great cameras and some great footage, these can fly at very, very high altitudes. And oftentimes people that are purchasing these aircraft don't necessarily understand that there may be an airport nearby, or they're flying in controlled airspace. And so we have airspace conflicts. So the FAA has released guidance for law enforcement on how, at a local level, they might be able to help facilitate the reporting of this unauthorized activity. So if somebody doesn't have a certificate of authorization or a Section 333 exemption, or they're not a hobbyist. Looking at the state level, so looking at state policy and legal considerations in the 83rd legislative session, there's House Bill 912, not to be confused with Senate Bill 912, which I think you all just mentioned. So coincidentally, they have the same number, but it essentially outlined the 19 different ways that unmanned aircraft imagery can be acquired within the state of Texas. I've given you a couple of examples here. They added a couple here recently in the 84th legislative session. So if it's aerial imagery that applies to engineering design or surveying, then those are another 2 ways in which unmanned aircraft imagery in the state of Texas can be captured. So since 2013, so this is this graphic right here in the top right-hand corner, you can see that there was several states throughout the country that were considering unmanned aircraft legislation. So this is the immediate fallout of the 2012 Modernization and Reform Act, the reauthorization from FAA. And the bottom right-hand corner, you can see the 2014 UAS legislation. I'm sure we're going to see 2015, another one of these maps from the National Conference of State Legislators that shows we've probably seen a continuing trend of looking at ways at the state level how this technology should be implemented. Right now, we're seeing everything from, I think, Texas. I think we can pat ourselves on the back. We've been trying to be accommodating for the use of this technology cautiously, but there's some other areas of the country where they are just essentially saying we're prohibiting all operations altogether of this technology until there's maybe a formal ruling from FAA. Now there's different considerations for that. Here, this slide right here, I'm not going to go into too many details, but here's some examples of local and even state initiatives as it relates to unmanned aircraft. We have one of 6 FAA test sites in Corpus Christi. So there were 6 that were selected. One is here in the state of Texas. That's great for us. I think that shows that we're being innovative and that we're on the cutting edge of this industry and its use. UTARI here in our region, the University of Texas Arlington Research Institute, they're an extension of the UAS test site out of Corpus Christi. So UNT, I've already mentioned the Arlington Police Department. These are examples of entities here in our region and locally that are using this technology. So the regional significance, and a lot of this comes from our Aviation Technical Advisory Committee and workshops and conversations we've had with them on, well, what are the concerns from an airspace standpoint that we need to be taken into consideration? Privacy is something that came up, yes. I think that's a concern for everybody. So the Texas Privacy Act, that House Bill 912 that I just spoke about, I think really that does a great job of helping address some of those privacy concerns. FAA has done their part as well as releasing some guidance too to give some sort of direction on best practices along those lines. Airspace and obstructions are also something that's it's just of importance to our aviation community. Lack of uniform rules and control. These are the list goes on. This is all in the process. This is all in the works. However, what FAA releases and what the state releases may not necessarily rhyme with what at a local level a city may be comfortable with and what their constituents are comfortable with. So some coordination that we've done for the local integration of this technology is working with our Air Transportation Technical Advisory Committee. You can see some of the actions that we've had as a byproduct. A little bit of background, we in 2012 published an unmanned aircraft systems report for as part of our FAA system planning process. Really kind of fast forwarding a couple years now. We held a workshop late last year with our ATTAC group, another one earlier this year in April, and finalized a regional guidance report, if you will, that kind of details the operations, policy, and local integration recommendations for this technology. Soon we'll be having another workshop. I'm going to, for the sake of time, I'm going to quickly move through some of these. Some of these slides are overviewing what was proposed in that small unmanned aircraft proposed rulemaking by FAA. But as an overview, actually it's probably going to be closer in August. We are going to host another unmanned aircraft workshop. And really what this is going to be doing, and this is as a result of the request from our ATTAC group and really some of our emergency preparedness professionals and others in the community on, we really want to sit down and look at maybe some local ordinance and zoning that would be important as it applies to this technology. So really that local level integration. So things that we're going to be talking about is the policy, some of the different integration recommendations, and specifically the local level planning strategies. So previous workshop materials and also the report that I mentioned, you can see an image of it right here. You can find it at nctcog.org/UAS. There's a lot of information on there about everything from federal, state, and even some of the things that we've been doing here regionally about the technology and its local integration. So with that, I'll just, in closing, point you to a couple different things as far as operators go and some different forms of outreach materials. FAA and several others from a government and industry side have joined forces, and there's a small UAV coalition that came as a result. So knowbeforeyoufly.org, I believe, is a website you can go that has some good information about best practices, and even your Academy of Model Aeronautics for those hobbyists like that. It's a good resource. So with that, I don't know if we have time for any questions or discussion, or if that's something that we're going to take at a later date.